The Japanese Hornet's nest on Bougainville was a near-perfect bunker system. Reinforced so artillery couldn't touch it, camouflaged so air power couldn't see it. Riddled with interlocking fields of fire so infantry who approached were cut down mercilessly. The United States military needed something that could advance under fire, resist small arms, and deliver destruction into the enemy's darkest hiding places. On January 30th, 1944, 5 modified Stuart tanks approached the Hornet's nest. Their weapons weren't bullets or shells. What they carried turned the safety of these tunnels into a trap. They were devastating to those outside and almost as dangerous and terrifying for those within. The US had no intentions of joining another global conflict, and thus, when it was dragged into World War II, it quickly realized that it lagged behind Japan and Germany when it came to one particular devastating new weapon: the flamethrower. Inspired by battlefield reports and the brutal close-quarters combat unfolding in the Pacific, the US military rushed to create its own version of this flame-spewing weapon. The result was the M1 flamethrower, introduced in 1941. It was a compact, man-portable weapon designed to flush enemy soldiers from bunkers, caves, and entrenched positions with a jet of fire. The M1 was simple in design: 2 gasoline tanks strapped to the back, a compressed nitrogen cylinder for pressure, and a handheld wand with a nozzle and ignition system. In theory, it could project a stream of burning liquid up to 20 yards forward. In practice, the story was very different. Early models proved to be dangerously unreliable. The ignition system, which relied on an electric spark or a small pilot flame, often failed in damp or windy conditions. Operators were known to carry cigarette lighters as backups to get the weapon going. As if that wasn't enough, fuel flow was inconsistent and the pressure system was weak, resulting in unpredictable bursts or outright failure. In some cases, fuel leaks or ignition failures caused the operator to be engulfed in flames by their own weapon. This was even before the wielder was taking enemy fire. Flame troopers, due to the threat they posed, became the prime target in any battle they participated in. They were slow, visible targets, with the M1 weighing over 60 pounds loaded. Despite these flaws, the M1 showed terrifying potential. After all, they were fighting a fierce defensive enemy who used bunkers and cave systems to cling to islands for as much time as humanly possible. With these defensive structures often camouflaged from an aerial view, air raids and artillery barrages became ineffective. Here is where the flamethrower made a difference. Fire found every crevice. It spread inside every bunker. If they could only find a way to keep the devastating power of the flames while protecting the wielder somehow. In the late summer of 1943, while training flamethrower troops on the island of New Caledonia, an officer in the 754th Tank Battalion had an idea that would alter the role of armored units in the Pacific. Observing the challenges faced by infantrymen using the portable flamethrowers, he proposed mounting one inside the turret of an M3A1 Stuart light tank, firing through the small pistol ports. Records don't reveal the officer's name, but some accounts point to Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Hart, the battalion's commander, as the mind behind the concept. It was crude, desperate, and made perfect sense. A tank could close the distance to fortified positions while shielding its crew from small arms fire, something no infantryman with a backpack flamethrower could hope for. But once inside the turret, the flaws of the idea became painfully obvious. The Stuart was claustrophobic from the inside. Squeezing in a 2-man crew was already tight. Trying to fit a full-length flamethrower was nearly impossible. Yet the concept was attractive. The Battle for New Georgia, fought in July 1943 against deeply dug-in Japanese defenders, drove home the need for armored flame capability. In New Caledonia, near Noumea, engineers began stripping down the M1A1 flamethrower, shortening the barrel and reconfiguring the fuel tanks to fit inside the Stuart's cramped frame. They mounted two 5-gallon gasoline canisters, one under the boy gunner's seat, another in place of ammo storage, and jammed the flame gun into the .30 caliber ball mount. By October, modified tanks were in the hands of the 3rd Marine Tank Battalion. A tense demonstration was held near Noumea, with US, Australian and New Zealand officers carefully inspecting the contraption. Time was running out. The Bougainville landings were set for November 1st, and these flame tanks were expected to spearhead the assaults on the fortified Japanese lines. Nevertheless, when the first wave hit the beaches, the flame tanks were not ready. It wasn't until January 1944, during the US Army's push to expand the beachhead, that the weapon finally saw combat. The 754th had been in the Pacific since early 1942, evolving from a light tank unit into something far more aggressive and terrifying. Now, under Major Reino Lehtinen, its forward detachment arrived on Bougainville with tanks that didn't just shoot, they scorched everything in their path. On the morning of January 30th, 1944, the US assault on Bougainville's Hornet's nest would become a proving ground for the new flamethrower tanks. The Japanese had established a dense network of defensive positions along the perimeter of the American beachhead near Empress Augusta Bay, anchored in reinforced log bunkers and held by elements of the 2nd Battalion, 4th South Seas Garrison. The defenses sprawled across several hundred yards from the east bank of the Torokina River to the village of Mavavia, posing a severe threat to American control of the coastline. Early attempts by the 132nd Infantry Regiment had stalled under heavy resistance. Portable flamethrowers, while effective at close range, exposed their operators to fatal enemy fire. General John Hodge, commander of the American Division, committed elements of the 754th Tank Battalion equipped with M3A1 Stuart light tanks, including several flamethrower tanks. At 7:45 a.m., smoke mortars from the 82nd Chemical Mortar Battalion began the barrage, followed by 81mm mortars and artillery fire. By 8:30 a.m., Company C, 132nd Infantry advanced, skirmish lines behind the tanks, with demolition teams close behind, ready to finish whatever the tanks started. The first disaster was self-inflicted. At just after 9 a.m., friendly artillery fire hit one of the leading tanks. The Stuart was engulfed in flames, instantly taking the life of Tank Commander Sergeant Minor J. Hall and severely wounding 2 other crewmen. Corporal Joe Simon escaped the inferno, but was gunned down trying to rescue his injured comrades. He was posthumously awarded the Silver Star. As the Japanese small arms fire became a storm, Staff Sergeant Jesse Drowley, positioned nearby with Company B, broke cover and rushed toward the injured men. With bullets flying right over his head, he managed to reach them and pull them to safety. The flame tanks were proving extremely effective in leading the attack and dismantling the Japanese defenses inside the bunkers. But even with the additional plates of steel protecting the flamethrower operators, they weren't safe from harm. As a M3A1, equipped with an M1A1 flamethrower, attacked a Japanese bunker that was suppressing the American infantry, the flamethrower operator suddenly found himself in the middle of a severe problem. He had managed to spray the liquid fuel through the bunker openings. but the flamethrower had failed to ignite it. In an epic act of heroism, the operator opened his hatch and threw a thermite grenade onto the jet of fuel, just as enemy bullets desperately tried to find him. In a bright, searing flash, the fuel was ignited, instantly filling the bunker with flames and taking all of the Japanese defenders out of action in one devastating swoop. At 10:30 a.m., the Japanese launched a counterattack with Molotov cocktails and mortar fire aimed squarely at the tanks. The attack instantly took the lives of Second Lieutenant John White and Sergeant James Jarman. Drowley again rose to the occasion as an unstoppable one-man force, spotting a hidden machine gun nest that was wreaking havoc on American troops and had somehow evaded both tanks and infantry. He sprinted through enemy fire to the nearest flame tank. He climbed onto the deck and hammered on the turret with the butt of his rifle, desperately pointing out the machine gun nest to the tank's crew. The tank unleashed the flames, but due to the chaos of the battle and the poor visibility inside the tank, it did not reach the enemy. Drowley took a submachine gun with tracer rounds, and despite being shot in the chest and face, he used the following rounds to direct the tank to the exact position where the enemy machine gun was. The glowing lines guided the tank crew, which finally covered the enemy position in a sea of flames, completely neutralizing it. Drowley was bleeding and half-blind, but he refused to be evacuated until he was sure the enemy position was secure. He was later awarded the Medal of Honor, personally presented by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. By early afternoon, the flamethrower tanks had to fall back to refuel and repressurize. Each shot of flame lasted barely 20 seconds, and their supply lines were long. At 1:30 p.m., 5 M3A1 tanks returned to the front and rejoined the assault. Working in tandem with infantry, they torched and blasted a total of 28 bunkers. 14 of them were credited directly to the flamethrower tanks. The remainder fell to a combination of portable flamethrowers, rifle fire, and mortars. The battle for the Hornet's Nest proved a turning point in the evolution of American armored warfare in the Pacific. It revealed the devastating potential of flamethrower-equipped tanks. By mid-1944, purpose-built flamethrower tanks like the Satan were entering combat, just in time for the volcanic and coral fortresses of Saipan and Guam. What began as an improvisation on Bougainville became doctrine. The jungle had tested the fire tank infantry team, and by fire and steel, they had earned their place at the center of Pacific strategy.